It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. I'm going to start off with a couple of interesting moments I had this weekend that really have been sticking on my mind. And this stuff happens to me quite often. You go to meetings, you go to places where people recognize you. I get this a lot, so it's not unusual, but it's another one of those things that makes me go, man, I wish I could solve this. I wish I could fix it. But I had a guy come up to me, and a guy I work with, and he goes, "Hey, you're that guy on the radio." And I said, yeah, that's me. He goes, I listened to you, and I agree with everything you said. And it's like, this, my gosh, I can't believe it. And I'm going, oh, okay, yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. He goes, and I listened again, and I agree with everything you said. You're right. And I go, well, thank you. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you'll continue to listen. And kind of left it there. And it's one of those moments where you go, that's great, but you're wearing a Trump hat. How do you square the two? You vote for Republicans. How do you square the two that you agree with me, that I'm right, but yet you vote against your own interests because evidently what I'm talking about you agree with, on manufacturing, on education, on healthcare, on you name the things that we've been talking about that I'm right about, and yet still voting against. And this is what's driving me crazy. And I've had a number of these conversations where it's come back to, I'll quiz people that, okay, if you agree with me, why the hat? Why do you participate in this? What is it about that draws you there when you agree with me when I'm telling you that, this is what this administration is doing, and I think doing well, and you agree with what I'm talking about. And what's interesting, that the response that I get back quite often is, well, you're one of us. You're a working guy like I am. You're not one of them. And I'm often struck by that, because I started this show almost 20 years ago because no one was talking to working people. My truck driver buddies, they were only listening to Limbaugh and Hannity and, the right-wing platter of crazy, telling them that, you don't need that stinking union. Those unions are no good for you. You'd make more money if you didn't have one. In fact, that line alone is what made me start doing radio. I had a guy literally come up to me and go, we'd make more money if there was no union here. And immediately I said, where is that happening? And if there is a place that's paying higher wages than you're making here, why aren't you there? And it was that moment where the guy, kind of stopped and, walked away. And a couple of days later came back to me and said, I've been thinking about that. And, no one ever posed that. And when I started this, it was about giving the other side. It was about adding balance. Now understand, over these last 20 years, the right-wing media has just gotten much more powerful. From morning to night, day in, day out, you can just be inundated with right-wing insanity. And it's all the same message. It's all outrage. It's all to get you to continue to listen, to be angry, to not solve problems. The problems are important. The issues are important. But the issues are important not to be fixed, not to be solved, but to be exploited, to keep us pitted against each other, so that working people don't talk to each other, and they're supposed to hate each other. And you get that kind of vibe. And when I tell my lefty friends that, I don't hate the people I work with. I think they're misguided politically. I think they listen to the wrong people. I think they have some bad ideas. But I don't think they're horrible people. I think they're reachable. I think if we talk to them, I think if I'm a believer that, I don't care who you are, we can sit down and have a beer, and we can hammer out ideas, and we can argue and still not have to kill each other. I still somewhat believe that. I don't know how I'm going to hold that on much longer. But the reality is working people, especially the white working class, Democrats in the left have left behind. They don't talk to them. And I've said one of the reasons that I think that I'm so successful in doing what I do is I have the credibility of being someone who has calluses on my hands, that my back aches at the end of the day just like theirs, that my knees are shot, my hips are bad, that I've worked my butt off for 35 years in a manual labor job that to be honest has gotten much worse over the years, just like they have. I've struggled and sacrificed just as they have. Only I see things a little bit differently. I don't allow myself to get pulled into the outrage candy that's being force fed to us, to where we're the enemy, to where we have to tear each other apart, while the guy who has never really worked a day in his life walks away with all of the spoils. So when I start talking to these folks about the issues that I think are important, the fact that we've got a tax code that's rigged against work, and the guy who did it was Donald Trump, they listen. They may not agree, but they listen. The guy who took their ability to write off their union dues off of their taxes was Donald Trump. The person who ensured that the very wealthy in this country got even wealthier were all of the parties, but mostly Republicans. When you look at the tax code changes that have happened in my lifetime, we have created a massive billionaire class. In fact, I had this conversation with someone, and I said, look, the reality is in 1953, we had a top marginal tax rate of 92%. If you made over, I think it was like $1.6 million in today's money back then, that dollar over $1.6 million, you paid 92% tax on. All the way up until 1962, I think it was, when Kennedy lowered to 70. And that 70% rate stayed all the way until Ronald Reagan became president, to when he dropped it all the way down to 28%. And then you saw this explosion of federal debt because we didn't have the revenue coming in. We didn't have the money coming in, but we were told, no. Don't believe what your common sense thought, that if you lower the rate, more money will come in. Don't believe your mind when it says, what? We're going to cut taxes on rich people. They're going to keep more of the money, but somehow we're going to magically have more. Didn't happen. We created a lot of debt. But we created a large billionaire class. And how do they use that money? Well, they use that money to divide us even further. And they've done a masterful job, to where now when I look at the sad reality is every one of the podcasts that are out there that focus on working people, most of it's the crazy stuff. It's all about the division. It's not about solving problems. And one of the things that I like to think about that we do here at this program is solutions. How do we move forward? How do we make lives better? When we went to numerous communities across this country, it was about, hey, how do we restore the pride that came with being a manufacturing community? A community like Akron, Ohio, that made tires. A community like Toledo, Ohio, was the glass capital of the world. Clare, Wisconsin, was rubber. You go down the list of all of the towns that we went through. That that central factory was the heartbeat of that community. And when it was gone, well, the identity was gone, and so was the sanity. And this is where I said, look, we used to have pro-labor Republicans. We don't anymore. I don't know of any pro-labor Republicans left. And I point to South Carolina. Just recently, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster's gave his State of the State address. And where, much like Nikki Haley did the whole, I'll wear pointy shoes so I can kick those labor unions. He said that he would fight labor all the way to the gates of hell. Yeah. Now understand, South Carolina has one thing going for them. They have the lowest union density rate in the entire country, and have for years. They've held that title for a very long time, and they're proud of it. They're proud of the fact that they have a union density rate of just about 2.3%. Just above North Carolina's 2.7%. Now you look at like New York, their density rate is over 20%. You look at Hawaii, their union density rate's over 24%. And you wonder why those workers make better wages, have better health care, have better retirement security, why the standard of living is higher. Oh, I wonder. But what we know is that in right to bargain, high union density states, there's a better distribution of income. But sadly, what's happened over the years, as we've deindustrialized, as we've lost those factories that were heavily unionized, as those communities lost their labor unions, the Republican Party walked away from them. Because there used to be pro-labor Republicans. There were. There were Republicans who didn't want to gut labor protections, didn't want to gut minimum wage laws, didn't want to gut prevailing wage laws, didn't want starvation and desperation working conditions. And go figure, because they had a vested interest. People would vote for them. So they had to be on the side of working people. But as those unions went away, because the factory went away, and I heard this a lot when we did our Working Class Heroes tour. Well, the unions abandoned us. No, the unions had nothing left here. The jobs were gone. The union is not something that's an outside entity. The union is the workers. The union is the people who are the members. That's who the union is. And this is what Republicans have done masterfully over the years. They've divorced people from their institutions. They've divorced people from their organizations. It's the government instead of our government. This is our country. This is our government. It's the union instead of it's our union. We pay dues to it. We elect the people who represent us. We fight for better wages, hours, conditions. Instead, they want you to think that it's its outside entity that it's a car insurance. It's not. It's participatory. It's active based. And that's what scares them. And that's why someone like McMaster's knows, in a state that has the lowest union density rate in the country, if that idea that, hey, I can make my life better by joining a union and bargaining, maybe I'll do that. Now, understand, he's all ripped off because this is evidently a case that may go before the Supreme Court, not sure yet, that has to do with the state's Port Authority and the International Longshoremen's Association. The state has always done the crane operators' jobs. There's a case going on that this could be done by workers instead of state workers, which they would have the ability to join unions, which is driving the state crazy. So he's a little bit upset by that. But in his speech, And I'm sure you've heard me say before, Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do. He said, we will not let our state's economy suffer or become collateral damage as labor unions seek to consume new jobs and conscript new dues-paying members. And we will not allow the Biden administration's pro-union policies to chip away at South Carolina's sovereign interest. And you go, what sovereign interests are you talking about? Low wages? Lower health insurance coverage? Lower retirement security coverage? Less safe workplaces? What positive are you referring to? Or is it the higher profits, the more exploitation? What is it, Governor, that you are pursuing? And this is where I come back to, we as working people get hung up in our red hat, blue hat fight. I don't get hung up in that. It's never been about red hat, blue hat for me. It's never been about black or white for me. It's always been about green. It's always been about fighting for better wages, hours, conditions, opportunities to make the lives of working people better. Look, our billionaire class, they've got tons of people who are looking out for them. They do. They're going to be fine. I'm worried about the people like me who get up every morning, drive to work, punch a clock, bust their behind, only to have that paycheck not go as far as it used to. And then to be told by a governor, hey, I'm gonna fight to the gates of hell to ensure that you working people don't have the opportunity to make your lives better. Now, South Carolina has 49,000, according to the census, 49,000 union members in the state. 49,000, that's it. They have 14,000, people who are getting union benefits. We'll call them freeloaders. They've got 14,000 freeloaders because South Carolina was one of the first no rights at work states that forbid mandatory union membership or dues. So you can be part of a be in a place where a collective bargaining agreement exists, and you get all the benefits, but you can basically freeload off of that. But here's what we know, and I go back to this because this is important. In places that have union contracts, higher wages, better health care, better retirement, safer working conditions. We know that. I simply have no idea why you don't fight for that. Now, the UAW, we talked about this last week. The UAW has come out and endorsed Joe Biden. There was no way they were ever going to endorse Donald Trump. And in fact, Sean Fain said, I can't fathom any union would support Donald Trump for president. Let's be real and let's look at the facts. And I tweeted out, I said, every labor leader, including the leader of my union, the Teamsters, I think Sean O'Brien should learn this phrase. I can't fathom why any union would support Donald Trump for president. Let's be real and let's look at the facts. The facts are Donald Trump was terrible for labor. Donald Trump was one of the worst presidents in my lifetime for working people. That's the fact. Life got worse. Working conditions got less safe. Wages went down. But you hear this revisionist history. Oh, everything was amazing. My Teamster president, Sean O'Brien, has a nice picture of him doing the thumbs up down to Mar-a-Lago. And they're going to evidently have a round table. They keep poking that bear. Maybe they will endorse him. Maybe remember that it was Joe Biden who helped secure the multi-employer pension funds, the Butch-Lewis Act that helped save the Central States pension funds. One that, if my grandfather was still alive, would still be collecting from. And the millions of workers who depend on those pensions. Donald Trump did nothing and would do nothing ever to help working people. So facts matter. Not alternative facts, but real facts. And not red hat, blue hat. but green. Because those workers that got the help, just like the UAW workers who saved their jobs, are the people who have the calluses on their hands from a hard day's work, who take a shower at the end of the day, whose bodies are a little more broken down at the end of the day, at the end of another week, at the end of another year. That's reality. But I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something in your mind, by all means, I want to hear it. What do you think? Where do you think we should go? What do you think we should do? Going to take a quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, President of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The Inflation Reduction Act will lower energy prices and create millions of new jobs by dramatically increasing the manufacturing of solar panels, wind turbines, electric cars, and energy-efficient home appliances. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice as Americans.
Q-Cells has been like the first around here that focuses on clean energy for millennials. Not a lot of us want to be jumping around job to job trying to figure out what we want to do. But in clean energy, we see a sense of job security and longevity, something that we're going to be able to do for a long time. It's important for Congress to invest in clean energy infrastructure because it sends a positive message to smaller communities like Dalton. It'll provide jobs for those that are struggling to meet their financial needs.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So there was an interesting story I came across that, you know, it's one of those things that's just so outrageous that it's true. That evidently people in my state of Pennsylvania are going to Wawa to go to the bathroom because the price of water has gotten so expensive because we've privatized a lot of our water services. Because, you know, hey, privatization was all the rage. And I remember when, you know, communities were going, well, you know, we're tapped out and we don't want to raise taxes. So we're going to sell off our water and sewer. We're going to sell off our infrastructure, our parking, our prisons. We're going to sell off all this stuff so we can get a little bit of cash to help us get through a strap period. And then, you know, we won't have to make the investments and the upgrades and the things that we would need to get this service to people. It's a win-win, we were told. And I remember that being thrown at me a lot as I was going, no, it's a bad idea. Privatization is a bad idea. In every form, privatization is terrible. And over the weekend had a beer with a Trump supporter and his son, who is much further left. And interestingly enough, both of them were telling horror stories of privatization from, one who works at NASA, one who was in the military, how we and look, this is not new. This is stuff we've talked about for years on this program, how we privatized the military supply chain. How during Iraq, basically it was Halliburton who was our supply chain. And how expensive it was to get food and water and plywood and basic necessities to our soldiers, where in the past, it was a military supply chain. There were soldiers doing this work. Now it was military contractors. People making huge money, a lot more money than the soldiers were making. And they were in it for the moneyed interest, not because they were defending the country or anything like that. And, look, NASA, same thing. The reality is we've outsourced most of that. We don't do anything for ourselves anymore because we were sold on this idea that privatization was great. So am I surprised that people are running down to the local Wawa to use the bathroom? No, it doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is more people aren't doing it. And what surprises me is we're putting up with it. This is the thing that blows my mind. Where's the outrage? You want outrage, Candy? You want something to be ticked off about? You want something to get all fired up about? Think about all of the stuff that was stolen from us, sold off for trinkets. And they're trying to do it to our education system. Because we've been trained like Pavlovian dogs to, when we think about, the private sector, they do everything more efficiently and better and cheaper, and it's better for us. You go down the list of all of the wonders of the private sector, and then the public sector is all bad. It's all bad. It's a bureaucracy. It's slow. It's no good. It's what we've been trained, and interestingly enough, it has worked because they have taken from us our assets. They have taken from us the commons, the things we once did for ourselves, and they are lining their pockets. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the working class, you get to work more. You get to work longer. You get to work without a retirement. Is that not something to be really upset about? I kind of think it is. For our free speech TV audience, I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time. For our radio affiliates, we're going to take a quick break right back after this. For both, if you miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. I also want to hear from you. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com.